You're listening to NorthWood's Church Matters, a podcast of NorthWood's Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins. Hey guys, welcome back to NorthWood's Church Matters, and I'm here with Rachel Bland, again, our Women's Ministry Director, and this time the shoe is on the other foot. We are going to do Rachel Bland's story today.
Yay!
And we're going to find out all the juicy details about her life.
Sounds fun.
Hey, let's start off with, where did you grow up?
Right here in Evansville. I actually grew up in Newburgh, went to Castle High School and graduated from there in 2010. And then I left for a little bit and went to school at WKU in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Loved it. But then I came back here and then I worked in Henderson for a while.
What do you remember from your childhood?
On Thursday nights, if anyone remembers Garfield's used to be Rapungi, I think is the restaurant right next to Outback.
Yeah.
Is that it? So Garfield's used to be right there. And on Thursday nights growing up was the night we went out to eat to Garfield's the majority of the time. But it was the first restaurant where they had the paper tablecloths. Mm-hmm. The waitress or waiter, whoever would come up and they would write their name upside down. And I thought that was the coolest thing. Mm-hmm. And so every time I would be at the table with crayons and stuff, I would constantly be trying to write my name like they were. And so we would go to Garfield's pretty much every Thursday. Not every Thursday, we'd go to other places too, but Garfield's was our go-to place. And then we would come back home and we'd play games. Mm-hmm. And so we did that pretty much every Thursday night. And Dad would always... It's funny now because he's not changed, so the same thing still happens when we play games, but Dad would always try to find a way to cheat. So we would play Uno, and he would say Uno and still have two cards in his hand, but he would just hide them behind each other. And my sister and I are 4.5 years apart, so there's quite a bit of an age gap between us. And my mom was sick and tired of us bickering and arguing because it was always like, well, I want to pick where we're going to eat. Or Allison would say, I did the dishes last night. It's not my turn. And so my mom came up with a calendar and had our day and A day. And we would have assigned days. And sometimes it worked in your favor because you got to pick the restaurant. Other times it did not work in your favor because it was your turn to do the dishes. So if it was our day, then it was you did all of the things. Or we used to fight over who got to sit in the middle at the kitchen counter. It was just stuff like that. And so we had our day and A day. And I'll never forget, my sister was a little mad one time because A day did not fall on one of the days that she wanted it to be her day. And she changed the whole calendar that my mom did. Well, my mom and sister have very different handwriting, and she got in big trouble for that. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was fun. But we did that kind of stuff, and we were a big game family. Checkers, and my dad taught us how to play that. We played Kerplunk. That was my sister's favorite. We played Battleship, the old school one, and then had the electronic version. And then I realized my dad was leaning over the screen to see where my ships were. And I was like,
your dad is a cheater.
He's a cheater. He's a really big cheater. He's constantly trying to find the loophole.
Mm-hmm. So who is the good kid? You are...
Oh, man.
So what is your first experience with church?
I don't really remember ever not being in church. I grew up at Grace Baptist Church in Evansville. I was there until I was about 7 or 8 maybe, and then we left Grace and we went to First Southern, and then First Southern we were there from the time we left Grace until I was about a sophomore in high school, and then I went to First Christian the rest of my high school years. So during that time we still did all of the vacation Bible schools. I remember my mom hosting a women's group. They just had women coming over and they would just eat together and then basically do a small group Bible study. And so I remember all of those types of things. And First Southern and Grace still had church on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings, and you had Sunday school hours. So I'm in a weird generation because I still very much relate to the traditional church setting as far as dresses and you don't wear jeans to church. But at the same time, I'm also on the opposite end of that. Church life has kind of been always a part of my life.
So what was Rachel like as a teenager?
When I was in 7th grade, so I'm 12 when all this is going down, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. The premise of the disease is where your immune system is attacking your muscles. So we didn't know I had it, but I started falling. My family called my smile the dead man's laugh because it just had a square look to it. It was just not a smile. It didn't curve up. It just stayed square almost, which is weird to explain. There are pictures I can show you later because I just couldn't smile.
So you had no affect.
Yeah.
Almost like Bell's palsy or something.
Yeah,
like
it was weird. I was laughing and smiling, but I could feel my face twitching, which is a weird thing. I could just feel my muscles not working. I got contacts because I was going into middle school. I thought that was the cool thing. And I would come home and my mom said that I would be looking up to her because my eyelids were so almost closed where I would have to lean my head all the way back in order to look at my mom or dad or whoever I was talking to. And they just thought my eyes were tired because of contacts. So there were things that were happening. Got my flip-flops taken away because they thought I was being a bratty, clumsy teenager. Then I had to stop wearing contacts and only wore glasses. So there were things that were happening that they just thought were maybe because other factors were happening. Well, then I started 7th grade and I had already been playing clarinet and I was getting lessons and I was playing the Star Spangled Banner and I could only get through the first 4 measures of the song and then my mouth would just stop working.
Which for clarification, if you're in band, you play the Star Spangled Banner over and over and over again. If there's a band kid, that's the song that they know.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. So I couldn't play it. The first 4 measures is really just like the da da dun 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 dun. That's basically all I could get through. And then everything after that, I couldn't play. And we were having a test coming up for you to be able to play it. And I knew I was not going to be able to do that. Not because of my inability to play, as in I don't know the notes, but because I just physically could not do it. So I was meeting with my private lesson teacher or whatever, and she had noticed it a couple of times and she said, hey, I think you might have a vitamin deficiency or something like that. I've seen this once before and it's just vitamins and stuff. It could just be something like that. Well, at that point, my mom had just had enough concern. And so she took me to the doctor. And then my doctor pretty much diagnosed me with myasthenia gravis on the spot. And so my mom was told, don't look this up because at the time, it wasn't pretty, basically, the findings of it, especially when they were also testing me for muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis. There was a lot of things that they were testing me for. Well, the test came back that I have myasthenia gravis. And so then they started undergoing a treatment plan, which in essence was going to be medication. I took a visit up to Riley, met with a doctor there. All at the same time, God is working in the midst of all of this. And he was orchestrating just a bunch of pieces that we had no control over. My neighbor across the street was a nurse who happened to work for a heart surgeon. And your heart's a muscle, in case you don't know. And so that also is affected with this autoimmune disease, because if your heart starts pumping too much, then your immune system could attack the heart. Basically, what was happening is I had my thymus gland, which is right above your heart, is the gland that produces antibodies in your body. It was producing too many. And so I met with a series of doctors. One doctor was, we'll just put you on medication. The other doctor, which was the heart surgeon, he ended up saying, I don't agree with the medicine because if you continue to increase your medicine intake, then you're not really fixing the problem. He said, I feel like the best solution is to just take out the thymus gland, which is very scary to a parent at any level, primarily because when they're telling you, I think the best solution is to take out the thymus gland, and they follow that up with, your daughter has a 50-50 chance of life or death, that's pretty scary.
And it's open heart surgery, right?
Yeah, it could not have been, but the way that they presented it to us was basically, if we don't do open heart style surgery, we may not get the entire gland. And so they could have gone through my stomach or gone in through my neck, but then again, they weren't for sure that they could get it all. And so December of 2004, I had open heart surgery. They didn't touch my heart, so nothing was touched with my heart, but they removed my thymus gland. And in the process of doing that, my sternum was broken. They put it back together with a titanium wire. I have the giant 6-inch scar down my chest. And then I have all of the things. And then literally the alternative from this surgery was 50-50 chance of life or death was you're going to be a vegetable for the rest of your life. Primarily because they were afraid it's the reverse reaction of a transplant. If they took out the gland, they thought the body was going to be so dependent upon the antibodies that were being produced that without that gland, that the body was just going to go into rejection. And again, your heart's a muscle and it could just stop beating because of it not having the antibodies to keep going. So then you'd be on a vent and then thus the vegetable.
Right.
So it was just really scary because you're 12 years old, but I don't ever remember that time period and saying, oh my gosh, I'm so scared of what's going to happen. I just remember the whole time just being, God's got this. And I was just very, and maybe you can chalk that up to me being 12, but that was definitely one of those times. I say all of that to say, what was Rachel like as a teenager? She was very much different because of that circumstance. Because I was faced with life or death at such a young age, I really became super aware that life is fleeting. And I think that's really been a shaping factor of who I am today. I'm not saying I didn't have teenage tendencies. I definitely did. But I saw life as something more than what other people, I think my age, were seeing it as. So I was more or less at school. I was befriending the teachers and got to know my nurse super well and would talk to her about Jesus and scripture and that sort of thing. So it was just, I recognized God's grace to me, but I wanted people to know that I would not be here had it not been for God, his sovereignty and his grace to me in the midst of that. So that definitely shaped me as a teenager and then moving forward, where I was just like, life can be taken away from you and eternity is real. So let's talk about it.
Were you a Christian before the whole experience?
Yeah. So I came to know the Lord when I was 7 years old. I will never forget. I don't even know what the sermon was about or anything, but as a kid, apparently I was asking questions about the gospel. And so my parents were sharing the gospel with me over and over again. But I remember sitting in the pew, and again, traditional church was you had the altar call at the end of the sermon. And I remember standing singing the song, and I remember looking up at my mom, and I was like, Mom, my heart's beating out of my chest. I need Jesus. And she looked at me and she said, okay. And so my mom was retelling the story. She was actually telling my brother-in-law. And when she's retelling the story, she said that I darted down the aisle. She said I was at the end of the aisle before she was even out of the aisle. It was one of those things where I recognized my need for Jesus so clearly. And like, I've told this story to some of our women before, but I knew even my disobedient heart of taking cookies out of the cookie jar whenever I was told not to take a cookie out of the cookie jar was sin. And so I recognized just from a little kid's perspective how that I had sinned and I needed a savior. And so I remember walking down that aisle. I remember exactly what I was wearing. And I went down and I talked to a lady named Miss Wanda, who was a part of actually founding NorthWood, which is really cool. And she shared the gospel with me, and she had these really cute child tracts and whatnot. And so she shared that with me. And then really from that point on, I gave my life to Christ. So yeah, I came to know the Lord when I was 7. And then so going through all of that when I was in 7th grade, my faith was in the Lord. I knew that even if God took me home, I knew where I was going to be. I knew that I was going to get to be with him. I remember telling my mom, if I get to live, I win. If I get to die, I win. I don't lose in this situation.
Yeah. To live as Christ, to die as King.
Exactly.
Even from that young age.
Yeah.
How did you struggle after you became a Christian?
In high school, the biggest struggle I had was people thought I was crazy. And even today, I get this, even from other believers, the term of you're just too intense, or your passion for the Lord is a little too much. And so that's hard to hear, especially from other believers, because I want to be on fire. And in my head, Jesus did the same thing for you. Why are you not on fire? And that's really hard. But in high school, I was the Jesus t-shirt queen. So I was the milk carton Jesus. I had that t-shirt.
Yeah, like it was the corporate logo turned into another thing. Krispy Kreme is Christ Supreme and all this stuff.
I didn't have that one, but band, we had to wear white t-shirts. And so I used that as my ministry. I would bring extra t-shirts for everyone because you got in trouble if you didn't wear a white shirt. Mm-hmm. So I brought extra t-shirts for everyone. And I went to the flea market and got white shirts that said, Got Jesus, or the milk carton Jesus, lost and found, the whatever shirts. And I forget all of the other ones, but I literally had so many. And we wrote on the back of the shirts, this shirt belongs to Rachel, so I would get them back. But I literally carried every different size because I wanted to minister to my friends so they didn't get in trouble if they forgot their shirt. But anyway, that became a joke in the sense of, well, Rachel's trying to share Jesus with everyone. But it also became a good ground. I was also very evangelical when I was in high school. My freshman and sophomore year, my mom was concerned because I sat with people who were very different than me. I sat with the LGBTQ community. That's really prevalent in band. And anyone who knows band knows that you basically do life with these people for a third of the year. And so I was with them all the time. And I was just like, if no one else shared the gospel with them, I want them to know that I care about them. And so I really just started making them my ministry in some sense. And so invited them to church. My mom thought it was super weird. You're a freshman hanging out with the seniors and the juniors. What's going on? So I think just like being able to communicate my faith was difficult, but also I was pushed. They challenged me because they were asking questions about the church and how people treated them. And so that was challenging. And then whenever I graduated from high school, the biggest thing was just doubting God's plan for me. I was single. I had never had a boyfriend. I felt like something was wrong with me because all of my friends had boyfriends. What's going on with me? And so then there was the whole, I would call it the girl struggle of the college dream is to have a boyfriend and to go to school and to do all of these things. I wanted to live into what the world said that I needed to do. And so that battle between the expectation that the world has of have a boyfriend and go to college and then get married right after college was not realistic for me. But I had to fight what the world said that I needed versus what God wanted for me. And that was where that doubt really started to creep in as far as, is God's plan for me good? Do I trust him? Do I trust him even when I don't have what I think I should have? And that was really hard. So anytime I had a crush on a guy, I had to be really cautious about that. And I failed miserably at those types of things because I would tell people I was the Proverbs 5 and 7 woman in the sense of not the seductiveness or whatever. The principle of that is they're positioning themselves in close proximity with the guy that they're into instead of allowing the man to just pursue them. I would know if I liked the guy, I would learn his schedule, and then I would try to be in a building at the same time as him, even if that meant me waiting for 2 hours. And I was waiting, putting that in quotes, but doing homework. I would always make myself look busy. And a lot of that was just because I was trying to make myself known or put myself into a situation. And I was just totally not content. And so I think that was my biggest battle in the midst of that. And just because I felt pressure to have a boyfriend through college because that's what is talked about. That wasn't my story. And so I was fighting that the whole time. And
what was your heart saying in the middle of that? That you were unworthy or you were unloved or you were less than? Or I
think it was just no one desires you. The other lie that I hear 90% of the time is what you do isn't enough for you to be loved. So I oftentimes will go above and beyond just to feel loved and accepted. And I don't even know where it started. It's just that's how lies just worked in my head. It was, especially for a guy, I felt if I wanted to be liked that I had to do stuff. An easy example would be, again, I literally did this for a crush, the crush that was diabetic, and I went out and got sugar-free gummy bears for them. And I still fight that. I still fight this whole idea of needing to do something in order to be loved and accepted. And that really comes out in mistakes. I think if I make a mistake, then I feel like I have to make up for it in order to be loved. It's just a huge reality that I'm constantly having to preach the gospel to myself.
Yeah. It's so funny that we can understand that we are saved by grace, but then also at the same time be very works driven with other people. You do something to earn somebody's attention or love. We need to learn the lesson of Jesus. So how were you called into ministry? I feel like this is going to insert me into part of the story. So.
Yeah. Well, I was a freshman in college and really just started living out my faith for myself. I always thought that my role in ministry was going to be a pastor's wife. I remember coming home one time and telling my mom, I think I'm supposed to be a pastor's wife.
Is that why you hung at a parlor all the time?
Maybe. I did a lot of ministry in college. My sophomore year, I led our evangelism team. And then my junior year, I was women's ministry coordinator. Basically what I do now, I did in college for the campus. And then my senior year, I was vice president of the Baptist campus ministry. And so oversaw a lot of stuff that was going on. Meanwhile, I was also still doing student ministry Sundays and Wednesdays at my church that I was a part of in Bowling Green. And so ministry became very prevalent and sharing the gospel became the thing. This whole concept of making disciples, I really just gravitated towards that. And it was this new phenomenon. I felt like at that point in my life, church had just been a thing that I did. And I was really getting to actually experience this transformation, experience this. And again, I just think it was that next level of understanding the gospel that the Lord was allowing me to see. And I loved it and I wanted more of it. Well, then when I graduated, I came and I moved back home. And so I got plugged into my church and I started doing ministry there. And I was just a volunteer. And then I felt God was opening doors. And again, I was just, I really want to be a part of whatever ministry is going on. And then there was this season of awkward time where I wasn't necessarily doing ministry in the church, but I was doing ministry. And so, for example, I started a Bible study at my school with women, and we were meeting in my apartment, and then we started meeting at school. After school, we would meet in the library and just discuss what God was doing. And I was doing this with unbelieving women, and it was just really, really cool to see God start to work in the lives of people I worked with. Whether I was doing stuff in the church or whether I was doing stuff at school, it didn't really matter. Trying to share Jesus wherever I was. And then in 2017, I was convinced I was moving back to Bowling Green. I don't know if you remember this, but I was dead set. I'm going to finish out the school year and then I'm going to move to Bowling Green and then start fresh.
I don't think I knew that.
Well, because I started coming to NorthWoods in January of 2017, and then we met in March or April or something like that. And by this point, I had been going to church at NorthWoods for a few months, and I had learned about the Ecuador mission trip, and I was like, wow, that would be really cool. But I was in my heart, I am leaving Evansville. I'm going to move to Bowling Green. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to go back to the church that I love down there. But we met, and I remember you coming up to me at church, and you were like, I heard you do student ministry. And my immediate reaction was, who lied to you? Like, because I didn't want anyone to know, because I wanted to just fly under the radar, because I had my agenda. I was leaving, and that was my plan. And then Matt asked to go to Parlor or Barber Bistro or whatever it was called then. I don't remember. So we went there, and then I don't even know if you know this. One of the things I had been praying about was writing a book has been a dream of mine. I have some ideas. I don't have enough time to write it. So maybe someday it'll actually get done. But I just started looking at jobs at Lifeway and seeing what I would need to do. And one of the things that you had to have at Lifeway was an internship at a church, or they wanted you to have some church background experience. And so I had been praying for that. I had been praying about maybe doing a missions trip, praying for friends, and I had really prayed a lot of those things in January. And so fast forward to March, I'm meeting with Matt. We're sitting at the table. He's getting to know my story. And then he looks at me. And so it's been 3 months. I don't really remember what I was praying for in January. And Matt says, so, hey, we've got some things going on. And I said, yeah, I noticed that Ecuador mission trip. And Matt looks at me and said, yeah, he goes, well, I just had a spot open up if you want to go. Literally today, someone canceled their spot. So if you want to go, you can go. And I was like, yes, sign me up. Yes, I want to go. And so that was answered prayer number one, but I didn't really realize that in that moment. Then Matt looks at me and said, hey, I have this internship available at church. And I was like, that's so cool. And so then I was hooked. And so I think I may have said, well, let me think about it. Well, then on my way home, I remember driving and the Lord was like, do you not remember what you just prayed for? And so I was, holy cow. So within 3 months, I felt like the Lord had just opened up all of these doors. He was giving me friends. I had this opportunity to go on a mission trip. He was saying, here's your internship, take it. And so I was just saying yes. And so I did the internship, never looked back. And I didn't know anyone that year. I remember doing VBS, calling people, and I have no idea who any of these people are. It was just so hard. That was really hard. I just continued to serve and just do what really I felt like the Lord had just placed on my heart to do, whether it was paid or whether it was volunteer. I just was saying yes to serving the Lord, whatever that looked like. And here we are. And now I'm on staff.
Yeah. So what are you currently learning about Jesus?
Well, this is always a fun question for me because it changes day to day.
Yeah.
And so this year I've been reading through the Bible in a year. I read Psalm 97, and then this is it. It says, Psalm 97, verse 1, the Lord reigns. And I just stopped. I've been battling this whole control thing, and really just my attitude has been not, I trust you. If anything, it's been, I want to trust you, but I'm sour that I don't see you more evident, which is kind of weird. And so when I read The Lord Reigns, I just felt this wave of peace, because I think we can get caught up in this whole worry and anxiety, and I'm afraid of things at times. I'm afraid of what people will think about me if I'm doing enough. I'm just afraid at times, and I'm worried about outcomes, or I'm worried about things that I shouldn't worry about. And I'm sinning in the process of all of that. And I know that, and I'm trying to just trust the Lord and relinquish that control to Him. And so when I opened it up and it said, "The Lord reigns," I just felt like this wave of peace where God was just reminding me, hey, I see all of the things you're worried about, and I'm reigning. Stop. I'm in control. You don't have to be. And then the next part of this verse says, "Let the earth rejoice." And I really just started thinking about, is my heart rejoicing that God is reigning? God is on the throne, and He is reigning, and I can rejoice in that. Even if I don't understand, even if I'm scared out of my mind, God is in control.
So sometimes it's a doubt of the character of God. Intuitively, we know, yes, the Lord reigns, but the doubt is that He has good in mind for me, or it's not the good that I want.
Right.
And we don't trust God that He would be good with the outcome.
Right.
And He is good with the outcome. He is a good God.
Yeah.
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 Awesome. So let's do some fun questions. So what is the first concert you ever attended?
Carmen.
Yes, Carman.
At Roberts Stadium.
Yeah, did he do the Champion?
Yes, actually, he was promoting that one. It was the battle of Satan or whatever he
God
does.
And Satan and...
Yes, in the boxing ring. But then after that, I became a Carmen Kids fan. Loved listening to the Carmen Kids CD.
Awesome.
Yeah.
He has lots of interesting songs.
Yes.
If you've never heard Carmen, do yourself a favor. And what is the worst food ever?
We just talked about this, and you did cauliflower. I think cauliflower is pretty terrible, so yeah, I'll just go with that.
You could agree with that. Dilly. Who is someone that you miss?
Oh, okay. So Miss Wanda was the lady who led me to Christ, but then there was another Miss Wanda who was very influential in my life, and she passed a few years ago, but she was probably like 70s, 80s when she passed, and I actually was just thinking about her. When you talked to her, you knew she was talking to the Lord as she was talking to you. And I loved that. I would go over, just sit at her kitchen table, and she'd usually have all the windows open. She had a little fountain outside, and so you'd hear the fountain when you were sitting in her house. And then she would just listen, and you'd just talk, and then she would just say a one-liner, and that would just rock your whole world. And I miss her. I miss her a lot. I miss her encouragement. One of the best things she ever told me was, God is not a God of confusion. And so He's not out to confuse you. If you feel like God's being confusing right now, then you're probably not hearing God. So she was just very encouraging, and you'd be talking to her, and if you said something that was really great happening, she would just look up to God, and she would just praise you. She just was constantly in dialogue with the Lord. And anyway, she did that so well. So I just miss her in that.
What profession would you like to try other than the one you currently have?
Okay, so this is so silly. But I really think if I were living in an alternate universe, I would secretly love to be a pop star.
Singing?
Singing, I think I would love it. I really do. I may not love it, but I would secretly love to try that. Isn't that weird?
That is weird, but I could sense some JoJo Siwa vibes.
Jump 5 was my jam when I was a little kid. Middle school, preteen, poppy stuff.
Who's Jump 5?
Jump 5 is, I don't know, do you know who 18s or Bewitched is or S Club 7? So Jump 5 was the Christian version of them. That you had the girl bands and you had the guy bands. S Club 7 was the mix of the two. Well, Jump 5 was the Christian version of that. And so I totally wished I was with their band. So I think if we lived in an alternate universe, I would love to just go do that. Star. Yeah, I just think that'd be so fun.
You know what the starting point of that is?
What?
Worship team.
No.
Yes.
That's not happening.
Yes. If you're listening to this, Rachel on the worship team.
That's a hard no.
Yeah. So what do you do to relax?
One of the biggest things for me in order to relax is to just, I really do, as extroverted as I am, I have a lot of introverted tendencies. So I have to have my quiet time. It's very sacred to me. So just spending time with the Lord is the way I get refilled. I cannot function without that. And then if I'm really, 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 really dry, then I really need to go to the beach. And that's not for anyone else except for me. Just because the beach forces me to just sit and do nothing and to just read a good book. And so oftentimes to relax, I just need to read maybe 20 minutes or to write as well. And so I'll write a blog or talk about what God has been teaching me in a blog or something like that. And so that's really how I try to relax. Writing or reading is usually how I do that, or baking cookies.
Baking cookies?
Yeah,
Wow.
I do. I have a hidden talent as well. I love to make sugar cookies. Any creating type of thing usually gives me energy. So I did a 4th of July cake. I was super proud of it. It has a flag on the inside of it and did the red, white, and blue icing colors on the side and all of that kind of stuff. That stuff actually gives me life. So it's very relaxing for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're finding out some new stuff. What is your favorite music?
Oh, no. Today, I think my album favorite would be Carrie Job's The Blessing right now. The actual album, not just the song. My favorite song today is Hymn of Heaven by Phil Wickham.
What is your favorite dessert? And I think you're going to say cookies, right?
I am a cookie girl. I love cookies. Chocolate chip cookies are my favorite, but the ones that are crunchy on the outside and soft on the middle. For my birthday, I love to get Sam's Club cookie cake. That's my favorite. But I also love me some apple pie. Apple pie in the fall, so good.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
Well, I think we're going to go bake some cookies.
Yay!
We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the NorthWood's Church Matters podcast. If you'd like to find out more about NorthWood's Church, you can visit us at our website, www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org.